Ah, we're live. I saw live. I saw live button. Good evening, good afternoon, wherever you are. James Farrar here from ADCU and Abdullah Hadi Razak. How are you,
Yeah,
Hadi?
I'm all right.
Um,
This is Hadi, a London chair for ADCU.
Abdullah Hadi. Thanks for joining, Hadi. And you're wearing the proper face mask with the. Is that a filter on the front? That white circular bit on the front. Is that a filter?
It's supposed to be a filter, but then it's quite difficult to breathe on it, to be honest with you. But then
Oh.
the requirement that we have to put in, and we fought for this, and you know it basically, for us to have guideline and measures, and we tried what we could, and this is one of the fruits from our fight, James.
Well,
That the
it is,
passenger
but
has to wear, and we have to wear it.
it's a bitter fight because today it was announced after a University College London study was carried out. They reckoned that quite a few bus drivers would have been saved if Britain had locked down sooner. So there's a direct connection between bus drivers dying and the government's decision not to shut down sooner. Now we know that applies. I'm sorry for so many people if it's touched you personally, but it has for some private hire drivers. Is actually private hire drivers and security guards and chefs were the number one group of professionals that had the highest rates of deaths in COVID-19, according to government stats. So we know if it's true that bus drivers could have been saved, then it must be true that private hire drivers could have been saved too. And we fought as hard as we could. We started that legal action to get both Transport for London and Department for Transport to do something. I think they did respond. They did respond to our activism. Unfortunately, it came a bit too late, but we are where we are. It'd be good to hear in the comments how people feel they're doing out there now. People getting back out there, or most people out back on the roads, or people still off. There's Latif. Hello, Latif. Are people still holding back, or are you working? And Suleiman, hello, Suleiman, how are you? Good evening to Leicester. Yeah, it'd be good to hear and Ryan from Paris. Hello, Ryan, how good to see you. It'd be good to hear from people how they feel things are going. Okay, so Tom Millen is asking what the results were. So I assume we're talking about the Supreme Court action last week. So this is the end result of a dispute started in 2015. I'm a claimant in that. So is Hadi, as a claimant in that, one of the original claimants in that case. And quite a few of people from ADCU have been on that journey all this time. Steve Hull also up in Birmingham.
When we started, it was 19 of us, James.
Yeah,
at the beginning.
And Yassine
I think now we
Azmi,
have
of course.
picked up the momentum. We have quite a lot of drivers who signed up for it.
Yeah.
That's right.
We won in 2016. We won the right to be recognized as workers, protected under the law as workers. The next question was, well, when are we workers? So the judge had decided we're workers at all times that you're logged in and ready and available for work. That was challenged in 2017 at the Employment Appeals Tribunal, and we won there as well. The judge upheld the original decision. It went to the Court of Appeal in 2018, December 2018, and there we won again, but it was a 2-1 majority. So two judges voted in favor of upholding the original ruling, and one voted against. And so we went to the Supreme Court finally. The hearing was last week. So when you go to Supreme Court doesn't really rehear the whole case all over again. You have to go to the Supreme Court with some clear areas of law that you want clarified by the Supreme Court. So you don't get to go and represent the whole case. You have to say, we disagree on some certain points of law. This is the grounds of the appeal. and that is for the judges to decide. And what it comes down to is contract law versus employment law. So under employment law, there's basically a rule, and it's an old case call about audit lens. I won't get into the details, but it's case law that's been very influential in our case. And basically, to break it down, it says, look, how do you tell if somebody's a worker or if they're truly self-employed on their own account and really in control of things? Well, basically, to break it down, it's a rule of thumb. If it talks like a duck, if it walks like a duck, and if it looks like a duck, then it must be a duck. And I think that's the same kind of discretion judges have had with us. Is if you look like you're under Uber's control, if Uber's setting the price, if Uber is penalizing you, if Uber's giving you the route and so on, then you must be a worker, and that's what's happened. Now, so myth number one: if you're a worker, then are you no longer self-employed? Are you an employee? Nope, you're still self-employed. The difference is that you're not in business of your own account. You're in business integrated into somebody else's business. So you're an Uber driver as part of Uber's business. You're self-employed Uber driver, but you're an Uber driver, you're part of Uber's business. And so they set the price, the fare, and so on. They know who the customer is. You don't know any of those things. And so when you're in that position, the law says that you should be entitled to the minimum wage and holiday pay, protection from freedom from discrimination, protection as a whistleblower, and so on. That's what we want. And so what was being argued in the Supreme Court was Uber was saying, well, that's all well and good for employment law that you can take this, walk like a duck rule. But what they were saying was, on the other flip side of that is contract and contract law. They're saying, look, contracts won't be able to do any contracting in this country anymore if these Uber driver claimants win, because it means that the judges can just come in and upend a contract and say that contract doesn't apply anymore because statutory rights invade, like worker status. And that's what it's come down to, really, is Uber's freedom to write contracts, which even they admit themselves are quite abusive and unfair and not real. Hello, ABB from Pakistan, good to see you. Versus our right to have statutory protections. So we will soon see what the judges have decided. I'll say this though, no matter what happens, don't expect this to be the end of the road. This is barely going to be the beginning. A company like Uber is relentless. I hope it will deliver real benefit, improvements and benefits for drivers, but this is an argument. Hello, Henry from Massachusetts. Yes, congratulations on that. Yes, I did see that the state of Massachusetts has just filed a case last week, and Alfie from Scotland, very similar. So we can see these cases are going along everywhere in the world: Massachusetts, Pennsylvania, California, here in the UK, France as well, of course. So these cases are cracking on everywhere. More or less. But what we do know is that Uber will resist. So even if we win, they'll play games with it and us. So we have to keep fighting, because the truth is that the law was never really written for something like Uber. We're looking at law that was made in the 90s, and this is a long time before Uber ever came. So you're kind of, in some ways, judges are trying to hammer a square peg into a round hole. And of course, the government hasn't gotten around to writing new legislation that will cover these circumstances. And although they threatened to do so for the last 3 years, they just haven't done it. And so we will see, no matter what, even if we have the full win, expect Uber to run off to a Tory majority government and ask to get the law changed immediately. So the point is we need to keep working together. We need to keep building our solidarity. We need to keep building our collective strength in this union. ADCU, App Drivers and Couriers Union, we're well positioned for the future. We're a union dedicated to private hire drivers on apps and other digital means, which is basically all private hire drivers and all couriers as well. Why couriers? Because we're recognizing, we're seeing now post-pandemic that this job is becoming integrated. More and more private hire drivers are also doing deliveries as well. So it's really important that we recognize that these changes are coming in our industry, and what, why, the struggle is the same, whether Uber Eats or Uber driver or Deliveroo, it's the same game. So, the expertise in the organizing, and the industry expertise in the organizing effort is the same. So it makes sense that we tackle this in one go. I'll stop rabbiting on and see if where's Hadi or Yasin, if you want to come in and say a few words as well. I've got some other things to talk about. But, hey, Hadi. Yeah, I think Hadi's on mute. If we can unmute him. There we go. You're live now, Hadi. Go ahead.
Yes. Yeah. We've been very busy last week. I mean, as James have explained, we went to the Supreme Court, and this case has started itself 5 years ago. It was 19 of us at the beginning, and now the case has picked up a momentum. We have a lot of people, and we're expecting to win it because we beat Uber along the way, starting from the tribunal, going through the appeal. And I don't see why we shouldn't beat them now at the Supreme Court, because the reason we went to court is to get them regulated. Uber were actually running around doing whatever they wanted to do to drivers. You guys have seen it last week. They've decreased the base fare. And if we didn't take this action 5 years ago, I think fares would have dropped significantly by now. But what has stopped the fares to go down significantly is because of this court case that we took Uber to court to make sure that they regulated. And I'm sure we would win. And I'm very confident that we would win. And we took, very important decision at the time when we took Uber to court. I was hesitant, but when I looked at it, I realized that we were right, and we were right, and we should get our rights, basically. And we should have not gone to court. The government should have actually dealt with it. TfL should have dealt with it at the beginning. We should have not been forced to do it alone, and this to drag on all the way to Supreme Court. Uber should have not allowed this, but they did this in order, basically. They knew they were going to lose, but they just did it, basically, to drag on, so that we lose the momentum. But we didn't lose the momentum. We took it all the way to court, and thanks to James and Yasin, who are actually campaigners for this from day one. And I urge everybody who is not part of ADCU to come and join ADCU. It's very simple to join in, adcu.org.uk. It's the only union that is dedicated to private hire drivers. All other unions, they have a conflict of interest. Go ahead.
Yeah, absolutely. Drivers union for drivers, and no heavy central bureaucracy. We're drivers working for drivers, and that's our culture. That's the way we've always been. That's the way we'll continue to be.
It's a union actually been set by drivers.
We got a bad connection there, Hadi. Maybe we'll get you back in a minute. Look, some people say, are we obsessed with Uber? No, we're not. Because at the end of the day, it's the business model. Uber's a bit of a euphemism for everything now, isn't it? So there really is, Uber's backed by one of its biggest investors is a company called SoftBank, a Japanese venture capital fund. But they're also the biggest investor in Ola. So, we've got, you have SoftBank, Uber, SoftBank, Ola, they're placing their bets, and so on. And then, of course, we've got Captain now, which is part of the Free Now stable. So, when we say Uber, we're kind of, this is the landmark battle. What happens here with Uber is going to set the stage for everybody else as well. But we've opened, before I talk about what else we're doing exciting, I want to say, look, the bread and butter of what we do every day is helping drivers, individual drivers. So we've had a string of really great successes with drivers dealing with licensing issues. Some drivers, some of them facing some quite serious difficulties. We even got an actual revocation that was a revocation. We actually got it reversed, which was really great news. So that's what we're doing. We do that kind of work every day. So, one of the things, not to be too self-serving or anything, but one of the things we're seeing is that we're seeing Transport for London in particular, get much more aggressive with drivers. They're contacting drivers about stuff that was reported from Uber years ago, like 2016. Some of this stuff is coming up. It's not coming up routinely. It's coming up at renewal. So at the point of renewal, all of a sudden you're confronted with stuff, and it seems to be what TfL is doing is actually proactively, if they know you're working for Uber, is proactively reaching out and asking for feedback and so on. So just be aware. Just be aware. We've had a good record in defending drivers. But at the same time, I think we kind of know how to do it now, and you need somebody in your corner. So by all means, join up with ADCU. Don't leave it till you're in a position where you're getting the call from TfL or you're trying to renew or so on. We've also been able to hurry up some renewals as well. Some people who've been delayed for one reason or other, we've managed to be able to get their license fast tracked as well. Okay, so some of the other things, really, really important stuff I want to talk about now is what we're doing on the data front. You might have seen some big news at the beginning of last week, just before the Supreme Court thing, that we've launched a new challenge against Uber in the Netherlands to challenge the fairness of the algorithm. There's a European regulation called the GDPR. You might have heard of it, the General Data Protection Regulation, the EU GDPR. And even though we're outside Europe now, and will be even more so at the end of the year, that law has been incorporated into UK domestic law under the Data Protection Act 2018. It's basically, implement the GDPR. And so all the nation states have had to do the same thing. They implement through national legislation the GDPR. So we're protected, but we're also protected by the fact that the data is being held in the Netherlands. So we can go to the Netherlands and avail of Dutch law to protect us. So why have we challenged Uber? Well, because the thing is a lot of people have been accused of fraud, been deactivated unfairly. We haven't been able to get a dialogue with Uber about it. We can't. They claim to have an appeals process, but I've yet to meet a person on this great earth of ours that has ever been through an appeal at Uber, let alone been successful in one. So it's been a dialogue of the death. But we do have rights under the GDPR. What are those rights? That, listen, there's 70 something articles. I'm not going to read it to you. But what are the most important aspects of the GDPR that are relevant to us? One, you've got the right to. By the way, GDPR is data protection, and what the context is your personal data. What is personal data? Obviously, your name and address and your phone number. But it's much more than that. It's all data that they have that can be linked to you as a person. So all your GPS traces, all the telematics data, everything that they monitor that's going on in your app while you're using Uber, they've got a record of it, and you're entitled to have all of that back. You're entitled to see it. So what are these rights that are really important? You've got the right to access your personal data, Article 15. So you've got the right to access it. You've got the right to fairness in how that data is processed, all of that data, not just your name and address, all the other stuff. And importantly, the other one is Article 22. You've got the right to protection from unfair automated decision making. So what does that mean? And one more really important right is you've got the right to the logic of processing. So let's unpack what this means. What's the personal data? So all of this data that Uber has, they have to give it to you if you ask for it. Simple as that. And you should ask for it. Just by, if we're all self-employed and this is our work data, you should ask for it anyway. Everybody should ask for their personal data once a year at least. On top of that, they have to give it to you in a structured machine readable way, not in a PDF. They've got to give it to you in CSV files that you can actually put it through an Excel or put it through a database and start to read it and make sense of it. You've got the right to an explanation of the logic of processing. Essentially what that means is the algorithm. So anytime that your personal data has been, pushed through Uber's sausage machine algorithm, they got to explain to you what that is, what's going on. You've also got to give you protection from automated decision making. Now, why does this matter? All those people that have been accused of fraud, we're saying that Uber's got to tell us now what was the fraud that was detected. And we've got to have the right to appeal against it. If there's an automated decision that says, James Farrer crossed the threshold of some level of fraud that Uber detected, well, now Uber's got to tell us, well, what did you detect exactly? And, it was wrong. So I've got to be able to challenge that. So while Uber might not like dealing with unions, those rights are enshrined and we're able to access them. Now, Uber's not any more inclined to obey data protection law than it is employment law. So it takes a bit of effort to enforce. I don't mind telling you, since 2016, I've been trying to get my data from Uber. And each time I get a lawyer involved, I get a better and better picture, probably 80% of the way there. But even last year, we got a really great data protection lawyer, a guy called Ravi Nayak, who's, if you've watched The Great Hack on Netflix, he appears in it. Even then, they didn't give me all the data. Now, I knew there was more because when we went to Employment Tribunal, they printed out every email I ever sent them. And attached to that, there was some notes that they made a mistake, I believe, in disclosing it to me, but they did. They put it in the bundle. And those notes show that I have a profile at Uber, but so does every driver. There's a driver profile. And they attach performance tags to that driver profile. So for mine, I had attitude, and the reason they gave me one attitude tag, at least that I know of, is because they sent me a job that was like 14 minutes away, and I sent them a message. I cancelled and I sent a message to say it was too far away and it was uneconomic, and that's all I said. And they didn't say anything. They just attached a negative attitude tag to my profile for that. They also attached a inappropriate behavior tag because I went to Gatwick Airport and I went inside the car park to pick up a passenger. The passenger cancelled. And so I had to leave without a fare, and I wrote to Uber and say, can I have my £4 back? And they said, sure, no problem. But then afterwards, I find out through these disclosures that they attached an inappropriate behavior tag because the customer service agent said in her notes she didn't know what other tag to attach. Now, the point of these tags is that we don't know how these tags are then being processed. So does that make me, a tier 2 or a tier 3 driver? Does that mean I'm getting all the crap work or all the good work, or does it make no difference at all? Like, under the GDPR, this is personal data, so they should have given it to me, and they never did. Number one, this whole entire profile. And number two, the logic of processing those tags, they should have given it to me. And number three, if there's any kind of automated decision making, as in that's feeding a dispatch algorithm to either feed me or starve me, they got to tell me that as well. So I hope that kind of makes clear why this is really, really important, because it gives us really serious leverage. What are we trying to do as a union? As a union, we're trying to build a data trust. We want as many of you to ask for your data in the first instance. And then secondly, later, if you choose to do so, to donate that data to the data trust, which will be controlled by drivers, then we can start looking at that data and seeing who's making money and how and where and what's going on. We can tell a lot more about the platform once we've got a volume of data. We can get some of the best data scientists in the world from the universities to help us analyze this data. But we can start answering the really important basic questions quite easily. We've got the infrastructure already developed to do that through some separate funding and through Worker Info Exchange, which is a non-profit entity that I work in, but it's set up to support gig workers with their data. But we've got the infrastructure set up already to analyze that data, analyze Uber data, and we can answer like how much did you earn for every hour on the road. We can talk about your utilization on the road, and we can also tell you about the quality and quantity of work, how the dispatch worked for you, and how it changed over time relative to ratings and relative to other people. So we're already able to tell some really good stuff. But what we want you to do, though, if you ask for this data yourself, I guarantee you Uber will mess you around. they'll send you some confusing emails around, oh, well, I don't know what this is, because it said it gives a little more information. The idea of that is to stop the clock, because the law says as soon as you ask for the data, they've got 30 days to give it to you. So if they send you a vague email back saying, oh, could you give us a little more information, but they don't tell you, this is the typical email, they don't tell you what it is, what information they're asking you for. So how do you respond? And if you're a busy person, when you get a vague email like that, as I do sometimes, I just don't ignore. I ignore it because I think I don't know how to answer that. So I just ignore it. And if you ignore it, then the clock stops. If you do proceed, then you may get a PDF, or you may get very limited data that you can't use, and so on. So we've set up a class action claim in the Netherlands with our lawyer there. So what we're going to do is we're going to accumulate, hopefully hundreds, hopefully thousands of drivers to sign up, and we'll all ask together through the lawyer. And that way we'll make sure that we've all asked together, and that we've all going to get the correct disclosure together, and you will get everything that you're entitled to get, you will get. And then if you choose to donate it to the trust so that we can build a picture together of what's going on and how we can campaign for ourselves, that's great too, but you don't have to. But we're asking for all Uber drivers and all Uber Eats couriers in Britain, or anywhere in Europe, anywhere in the European Economic Area, EEA. So it's basically the EU plus Norway and the UK and so on. Just all you got to do is register at the address that's on the screen now, adcu.org.uk/WIE. And all you got to do is just register there, and then we'll send you an authentication, which you get in your email. Then click that and then finish the registration. And the reason we need the authentication is because then we can prove that we've checked your ID and you upload your ID, and it's all secure in the cloud. And then what we'll do then is you give the mandate for the lawyer to ask for your data and make sure that you get all of your data, which is your right to do. And remember, as a digital worker, as an Uber driver, there's nothing negative or aggressive or contrary about asking for your data. These are just simple rights. As a self-employed person, why wouldn't you ask for your data? You should ask for it, and you can get it. And by working together with that data, we can start rolling back things like these unfair deactivations for fraud. I can't tell you many people whose lives have been turned upside down by that, because if you're locked out of a big platform like Uber in London, it's tough. Like, it's tough to continue in the business. And that's very unfair. But we can start to roll back. We can start to challenge these things by using these rights that we have to our hands. And they're quite potent rights, because it's got to do with data and digital rights and data protection, and that's at the very heart of their business. That's not an area that they want to be out of compliance with. And actually, for their TfL interim license, their temporary license they got, one of the conditions on that license is that they must be compliant with data protection law, not just for riders, but for drivers as well. You can see that if you look it up on the internet, or we can post it here for you. It's a condition. So Uber has to obey GDPR for us and you. So please do consider joining that. I better stop, as we're way too long here, but please do adcu.org.uk/WIE. Please register so that we can do a class action. If we can get hundreds of drivers together, that's going to be really amazing. If we can do that, if we can get hundreds of drivers from all over the UK, all over Europe together, one claim, Amsterdam, everybody gets their data separately, and you can do with it what you will. We'll give you some guidance, even if you want to keep it yourself, on how to analyze and what to look for. But we want to make sure that we get all of the data from Uber. Yes, Waka, so I really agree, and definitely, if you've been suspended, deactivated, anything like that, you definitely want to come forward here, because we can challenge it. We can say, what was it in the data that made you make that decision, especially for something like fraud or a complaint or something like that. We can. They got to substantiate it now, and even unemployment with employment law, even with worker status, you've got no protection, by the way, from unfair dismissal. Even if we get full worker status from the Supreme Court, there is no protection from unfair dismissal. You can be dismissed for any reason and for no reason at all. The closest thing we have to protection is this protection from automated decision making under GDPR, and we should leverage it. So please do click that link. Very simple registration form. Gives our lawyer in the Netherlands the right to act for you. Won't cost you anything, to make sure that you get all of your data, and we can work with you in understanding it. Okay, I better stop and see if Yassine is around, or Hadi, or Shalin. Hadi, of course, London chair. Shalin may be joining us. He is he's the vice chair of ADCU London. Is anybody else on with me, Yassine? No, just me. Just keep talking. Well, okay, so what other news is going on? We're still going through the detail on it, but the Department for Transport is just issued new guidance to local authorities, including Transport for London, on licensing. So they say there's statutory guidance, but it's not statutory, because there's no legislation. It's guidance. I don't know why they call it statutory guidance. It's guidance. We're still going through it, but one of the things that seems to be the new guidance is the DBS every 6 months. So get ready for that. It's going to cost you a bit of money. So that'll be one thing that you can expect to come out of this. Let's say we'll send something around on that shortly. Nothing else I can say. I can say that we put in a complaint some months ago to Transport for London and to the Metropolitan Police about unfair stoppage of private hire vehicles relative to taxis. Because what we could see from a clear looking at the data for a full year of compliance action by both Transport for London and by the Metropolitan Police, that TfL were stopping a private hire driver, an average driver. So this is adjusted now for relative scale, because I know there are 4 times many more private hire drivers than there are 5 times many more private hire drivers than there are taxi drivers in London. Yeah, that's right, Vindy. Every 6 months, that's what it looks like. What it's going to come to now. They were stopping. So if you are a private hire driver in London, you're 3.7 times more likely to face an enforcement stop from TfL, and 1.5 times, 1.5 times more likely to be stopped for enforcement by the Metropolitan Police. Now, when you're stopped, 2 things are going to be examined: your vehicle and you. And in both cases, for both Transport for London acting independently and the Metropolitan Police acting independently, both cases, both the vehicle, the private hire driver and the private hire vehicle, has been more compliant than the taxi driver and the taxi vehicle. So, we're asking the question: well, why there's such a discrepancy in the stoppage rate? Because we also can't ignore the fact. And we can't ignore this, because it is a fact, and we have to, face these issues head on. That 94% of private hire drivers are Black, Asian, or other minority ethnic groups, whereas 85% of taxi drivers are white British. Now, we can't ignore that, especially in light of the fact that when private hire drivers are stopped, they're more compliant, but yet they're stopped 3.7 times more frequently if you're an average private hire driver. So we put a complaint into the police about it, and we'll send something around about it. But the answer back from the police is odd. What they're saying is, well, the reason why is because taxis operate more in the centre, in zone 1, and it would be too difficult for the police to make on-the-road stops in zone 1 because it would be too disruptive for traffic. But to me, it's it didn't make any sense, because if you're stopping because the driver and the vehicles are not compliant, then where they're operating is not really the problem, is it? I mean, then that would mean, by that logic, it would mean, great, if you're not compliant at all, just stick in zone 1, because the coppers will never stop you. It doesn't make any sense. And of course, they could always go to ranks and so on. So it's the most lamest, stupidest explanation I've ever heard, but nevertheless, so we'll have to respond to it. But it absolutely makes no sense to me that that's the best, after nearly a year after lodging that complaint, that's the best explanation they could come up with. But anyway, there we go. Sheldon, hello, sir. How are you?
Hi, James. Yeah, I'm good, very good. Apologies for the lateness today. Normally I'm on, but I just stuck with some work sort of stuff. But yeah, apologies for the lateness. Hi, everyone.
Not at all. Why don't you introduce yourself, Sheldon, and maybe you can tell us about what your experience is, if you've gone back to work yet, or how things are going out there for drivers in London.
So basically, my name is Sheldon. I'm elected the vice chair for ADCU. Prior to me joining ADCU, I used to be a workplace and health and safety rep for Unite the Union. And I used to work in the financial sector for NatWest Bank, and part of my role was to support people, obviously for disciplinaries, disciplinary appeals, grievances, dismissals. So I've done plenty of employment law and that kind of stuff, been to public galleries and stuff. In fact, I had my own case with NatWest Bank in the employment tribunal. So I've done a lot of that, and my main reason for joining ADCU was to support workers' right. So I know we all work very hard, but we have to make sure that we work together, and we are a collective. So we have a better bargaining tool kind of stuff to be together. Yeah, that's the reason why I've joined ADCU. And I saw James and I've seen Yasin, who's doing a great job. And I said, I need to join in, and I've got to make this a stronger union. The main thing is that we've got 110,000 drivers right now in London. And what we have to do is we have to mention and speak to most of these drivers, because I'm sure in London, everyone's experiencing some sort of issues with the operator. And if everyone joins in, we are stronger and we are better, and we'll make sure that things get put in the right place. And that's the thing. Yeah.
Yeah, thanks, Sheldon. We are really lucky to have you on board as vice chair in London. A tremendous experience that you have coming from Unite. And just for we haven't been live, actually, just so everybody knows, we have been listed. Maybe we can put the link in this chat, but we've been officially recognized in the government's list of trade unions. So we are now an official trade union. We've been, and to be honest, it's not easy to get that recognition. You have to go through a fairly rigorous process, and your governance and your financial affairs, all of that stuff has to be really top notch. So we're really proud that we've made that grade. And of course, it's really great to have somebody like Sheldon's experience on board with this as well. And you're quite right, Sheldon. Like the thing that we have to remember is that is in the end it's going to be about collective power, and that's what we're kind of thinking about in terms of data and thinking about beyond the Supreme Court. We have to be in for that long fight of building collective power together. That's the only thing that's really ever going to change everything decisively in the future, is strong collective power amongst drivers, and we have to just set about the hard work of building that.
That's right.
Yes. So speaking of which, congestion charge. How's it affecting you, Sheldon? Are you paying the £15, or are you staying out of this central?
Well, I try to stay out of it, but I think Ola's are offering some sort of benefits where if you take a ride during a certain time, which is normally 3 to 5 or 5 to 7, they've got this reward scheme where they pay £15 or they'll pay £25. So that would kind of override the congestion charge. But I don't know the other providers whether they're doing it or not, but Ola's been doing it. Business is slow. I must say, business is not like as before. There is very slow, and the £15 congestion charge, I don't think it's acceptable. After a driver, obviously the hard work they do, and they end up paying £15. I think it's unacceptable, and it's something that we must keep on challenging.
Yeah,
and
it is. I agree with you. It's not acceptable. But I think, I think what we're seeing on the congestion charge and on these issues, we're seeing a really big shift in how cities operate and how politics operates as well. We in another life, in another identity, fought this very hard last year, and it's funny. I ended up on charges of assaulting 2 police officers at a demo for simply being there with a megaphone. The police got really aggressive with us, even though we had permission to demonstrate. They clearly targeted our demonstrations in a very aggressive way. And you don't have to be Sherlock Holmes to figure out what's going on, because the police responsible for policing the demos are the Road and Transport Police. And the Road and Transport Division of the Metropolitan Police is the biggest division of the Metropolitan Police. And it's, guess what, 94% funded by Transport for London. And guess what, it's co-located with Transport for London at Palestra. Now, what I found was that when I did a subject access request, as per my data from TfL, I found that that police officer that was involved in, frankly, stitching me up was chit-chatting with Transport for London licensing staff in the days before the demo. And they were watching these Facebook videos that we're making now and asking TfL, what does he mean by this? What does he mean by that? And so on. And what we found over the series of demos is that although we had permission, they became really more aggressive. And so I ended up being accused of assaulting 2 police officers by just simply speaking on a megaphone. I didn't actually even run up and place it in their ears. They stood in front of me while I was speaking on it. And what they sort of said was, okay, there was no intention to hurt somebody or assault somebody, but you were behaving recklessly. And with an assault, it's either intention or recklessness. So they said, okay, you were reckless with the megaphone, that's an assault. And it could be up to a year in jail. So, I mean, it was really a very stressful time, but it shows where the police were at and their collusion, collaboration with TfL. And then also, then in the demos, the final demo we had was on London Bridge, and they practically treated it like a traffic stop. They were checking tires and licenses, and they were going around with cameras, doing license plates and so on. So I think, this is back to that letter we had with the police, that, we need to challenge some of this behavior from the police, because if not, it gets worse. But at the same time, the congestion charge, it'd be good to hear what people think. But, my reading of it is that I think the big losers in the end for all of this is going to be the taxi trade, because that congestion charge thing, in the differentiation how we were treated compared to taxis, was really about protecting the taxi trade in the central zone. But I think post-pandemic, what we're going to see is all the action is going to move to the suburbs now anyway. I don't think these businesses are coming back to the city, central London, anything like the volume that they were there before. I think, once those companies have got used to working at home for 6 months, their CFOs are not going to be want to pay the heavy rents in the city anymore. And so I think, and all the pedestrianization, that's not going to go away. I just don't think it is, because it's got to do with the emissions and the air quality that the mayor's been pushing. And also we're seeing this in other cities as well around the world, this sort of rampant pedestrianization of the center. So I can't see that the congestion charge is going to be rolled back. It's not, because I think this time what's happened is central government has told the mayor he has to do it. So we can protest, but he's going to turn around and say, yeah, but central government told me I have to do it. What do you want me to do? So I mean, I think we got to pick our battles, I suppose. But I mean, it'd be interesting to hear what people have to say. But certainly be careful with the police, because you don't want to pick up a charge or a caution because your license has stake and so on. But anyway, I'll leave it there. Shalom, what do you think it's at? Like, are we back to 50% yet, or what? Where are we?
What, in terms of
normal trade?
I think it's about 50%.
Yeah.
It's not that busy. It's about 50, but a lot of people are speculating the future that we probably might go into another coronavirus. Countries like India right now, they're suffering quite a lot. Leicester, they've done a lockdown down there, so people are feared right now, I must say. So I remember drivers used to make about 150, 170, 120 a day. Right now people are probably just making 80 pounds, 90 pounds a day. Business is slow. So yeah, it's getting there, I would say. Yes, people are going out because they still have to feed their family and stuff. But I think it's probably time to wait and watch, go slowly, see how it's progressing, and see what the government's doing in relation to it, and stuff like that. Because I think one of the industry that's suffered majorly is the taxi drivers, the gig economy. We've suffered quite heavily and stuff in this whole pandemic and stuff. And we're probably neglected in compared to the industry, if you have a look, because they've done grants for everyone, but they haven't done any grants for taxi drivers. So any little grant or something would have been supportive. Yeah, you got bounce back loans and you've got all this stuff, but it's a loan. It's not a grant. So there's no money in the taxi driver's pocket. They've done stuff for key workers like NHS, policing, teachers, bankers. I hear that NatWest is basically getting some sort of support from the government. It would be nice to support 110,000 taxi drivers in some form or way. So I think if we can get look into that, maybe hopefully the second, I think right now people are saying, I think scientists are saying we may go into a second pandemic. We're not sure, but countries across, they are getting affected. So it's just probably observing, keeping an eye out at it and see how it's going, kind of stuff.
What I'm worried about too, Shalin, is that, like, if you think where Uber and Co came from, they're very much a child of the last economic crash in 2008, 2009. And, you had people who were laid off. It was sort of unemployment in the States. And, this was a good way of picking up casual work,
right,
without overcommitting yourself somehow. That was the idea anyway. And, I was watching a video that was done with a Silicon Valley website called The Information, but they had the CEO of Bolt on there and the CEO of Grab in Australia and CEO of Viavan. And what they were saying, they were actually kind of bragging about it. They're saying, look, post-pandemic, we're going to have a greater balance on the supply side, because we're going to have more and more drivers wanting to work. Because they were saying, like, in places like Africa,
right,
they have much more supply than they have demand. Whereas from their point of view, there's not enough drivers in London because they'd love to make it cheaper. But they're saying that, like, in London and other places like that, post-pandemic, you only have to look at the job losses at the airport, all those ground handling busted up, and all the airlines that have laid off thousands of people. Those people could end up flooding into private hire, and and drive down prices and drive down, make things worse. And there's no protection for us because there's no capping, there's nothing. So, like, we have to be ready. So somebody just asked on here when we're going to get a result from the Supreme Court. We don't know. The short answer is we don't know. But I would imagine all these judges will go off of their holidays in August. They won't do anything. And they might work on it in September. So we might see a result at the end of September or October, maybe as late as November. But and it depends on how divided they are, and because they'll have to write a confirming opinion and a dissenting opinion and put it together. So we don't know. We really don't know how long it'll take them, and maybe it'll take them 6 months. We just don't know. But what we have to be ready for is, because it is the final word from the Supreme Court, we have to be ready.
Yeah.
Because if we win, you can be sure that they'll run to Boris Johnson and say, this is an outrage, this is going to kill the gig economy dead in in the UK, and at a time when we need flexible employment, post-pandemic recession, and so on, this is a terrible decision. We need a law changed immediately. Or if they win, or if they get something that suits them, then we have to be the ones to say, well, look, the law failed us. The law left us without any statutory protection whatsoever, even though we are workers that are captive, that we're not in business on our own account. We were left without any statutory protection. So whatever happens, there's going to be a bun fight at the end of this, and we have to be ready for that, and we have to be ready as a collective, and we have to be ready with collective power to be able to speak with one voice, because we won't be heard. We have to be heard at the end of this, I think. Sorry, Shalom.
No, that's fine. Yeah. No, I that's absolutely right, James. What you said. We need to be together. So it should be one voice, and we've got to be collective. And the more we are, the better they can probably get it and stuff. And it has to come through. The message has to be very clear. Very simple. We're not going to let them have it. Simple. We're not going to let these people walk over us. We work so hard for the money, and it's got to make sure that the message goes very clearly in a polite way, but in a straight formative manner, basically.
Yeah, that's fantastic, Shalon. And that's which brings me back to this question of access to data and challenging the algorithm. You know, it's the algorithm that manages us. You know, the thing is, if we were to bring this case today, we would have a much harder time, because back when we started this, like looking at this in 2015, Yasin is 2013 to 14 and 15 and 16, you know, we need, you know, in order to get your rights as a worker, you need to evidence you're in this relationship. And Uber's, you know, it's a bit like, I don't know if you're going out with a girl or something, and you say, yeah, well, you know, I'm your boyfriend, and she says, hey, I'm not in a relationship with you. I mean, that's what Uber's doing. Uber's saying, we're not in this relationship. We're saying, no, we are in a relationship.
Yep, of course.
And so that's what, it's as simple as that when you go to court. And so the judge says, well, we'll prove that you're in a relationship here.
Yeah.
And so we were able to prove a lot of documents to show that there is control was being exerted. We didn't control the price, and that Uber was penalizing, putting people in penalty boxes, which they were, and deactivating people, and, you know, suspending the account, and taking money, deducting money, and all that kind of thing. So we were able to show that there was a range of activities here that put them in control. But what's happened since is that these documents, you don't see these documents anymore. You know, tidied all that up. And so they don't even tell you anymore about what's going on. All of the management function is automated in algorithm. But the thing is, you're still being managed. All an algorithm is, what's an algorithm? It's a recipe. It's a list of instructions. That's all it is, you know. A recipe, what's a recipe? A recipe is, here's a list of ingredients and here's what to do with them. Well, that's the same thing as an algorithm is. Here's all the personal data, and here's the instruction of what to do with it. That's all an algorithm is a recipe, like in a cookbook. Absolutely. And we have the right to see it. And just because management has been automated doesn't mean it doesn't exist. It does exist. You just don't see it. So that's why it's so important for us to get access to our data, because we can build a picture. The other really important reason why we need to have access to this data,
I think, it's access to all our data, making sure that we get access to the data, that everything that's put against with us, because they're putting on us. Then they're probably, you know, absolutely. I mean, yeah.
Well, the other thing, Shalon, that I think is really important is that the regulator is starved of data as well. We know that. When Dara Khosrowshahi, the CEO of Uber, came over to meet the transport minister at the time, what's his name? Chris Grayling. Chris Grayling's staff brought up to Dara, he says, look, Dara, there's a problem here. We've got all this traffic information is locked up on a private platform, and we're a transport regulator, we're the transport ministry, for the love of God, and we have no data. You know what Dara said? He said, you know, Uber will do the right thing. And so what we're seeing is that cities now are starting to put more pressure on in getting the data. So New York City gets all of the driver journey data. So there's San Francisco just went to court, Los Angeles, Mexico City, and so on. So and also there was a conference recently where the city of Amsterdam was on the panel with Uber talking about automating compliance, right? Now, we know this is what happens in New York as well. So imagine a world where, you know, TfL is squeezing Uber hard, right, to get the license. You know, they're back in the magistrate's court. What if Uber turn around and say, okay, we'll give you the data, the same data that we give to New York? They won't want to, but they will. Like, there'll be currency to bargain with. Hey, what if we give you the data? What do you think TfL will do with that data? They'll automate enforcement. Your MOT is expired, no problem. We'll send you a PCN, and they have the power now to do PCN. We'll send you a PCN in the post. We don't need to have 200 officers on the street. So basically, everybody will have our data, and we'll have Uber deactivating you for fraud. You'll have TfL sending you PCNs every 5 minutes. But you, the owner of the data, have no control over it at all, either as an individual or as a collective. Now, if we have collective control over our data, you see, the other thing is when Uber goes to lobby TfL on congestion charging, because, by the way, it was Uber that pushed for congestion charging because they want that rather than caps. And they know that you'll pay it. They know that they've got the power to make the workers pay for it rather than themselves. And they know that they can outcompete smaller operators on this issue as well because they can optimize better than everybody else. Well, imagine a situation where, you know, big policy decisions are being made by TfL, and Uber's the only person or the only entity with any data. So Ubers can say, well, we know what the truth is, and we'll tell you what it is. But nobody else can question it because nobody else has data, right? And so if we have data, we can say to TfL, we can say, listen, you can keep charging this congestion charge till cows come home. It's not going to reduce congestion, only reducing the number of vehicles will. And we'll need to do that because if post-pandemic there is a big unemployment problem, you know the government will want to flood the streets with Uber drivers trying to scraps. So get that data, adcu.org.uk/WIE. Let's build our collective power today. Sign up for free. Our lawyer in Amsterdam will make a collective request that we all get our data, we all get it properly in a standardized way. And we can build collective power if we do that.
Absolutely,
data power.
absolutely. Data power.
All right. Yes, so Yassine saying, don't forget to like the Facebook page. Please do. I hate to be so shallow than to be begging for Facebook likes, but begging for Facebook likes. But it's just really important because then when you're liked on the page and you follow, I think you need to do both. Then if we got something coming up or we have an announcement or something's happening, you know, you'll be alerted. And so it's really good if you can do that. And also, if you're watching this remotely or later, you know, or even now, just share it so that other people get the word out. We haven't done one of these for a while. Right, Yassine, want to come back in and say a word? And Hadi is Hadi back on as well? Anybody else out there? Are we going to wrap it up, Yassine? Or Hadi? I don't know. I'm out of things to say, Shalin. I don't know about you. Or there's somebody saying good night. Okay. You got anything else to say, Shalin?
I'm all done. I think you've covered most of it. I think the data subject was the really important one right now, which I was going to say as well. And I think it's very important that every drivers do request a data subject, which is a subject access request of their own information, and that will be really good. So yeah, no, that's.
And you can do that by registering adcu.org.uk/WIE. And remember, we're a couriers union as well. So you know if you know. Deliveroo riders, I'm doing some Deliveroo myself these days. If you know some Deliveroo riders, Just Eats, delivery guys, Hermes, DPD, Amazon Flex, Uber Eats, whatever, you know, just and I know a lot of people are doing these deliveries, you know, as we get through the pandemic. Please do, because, you know, this business is integrating. You know, Amazon just bought or just been cleared to buy Deliveroo. You know, so you got Amazon Flex and Deliveroo coming together. You know, you got Uber Eats and Uber. You know, Dara Khosrowshahi, the CEO of Uber, said that he expects he expects rideshare to fall to 50%, and that Uber Eats delivery, and they've just acquired Postmates, so delivery is going to become at least 50% of what they do in the future. So this whole delivery and passenger and driver is really integrating, and it's really important we all understand that and we all work together. So if you're if you're a courier driver, delivery driver, this is the union for you. Join up. If you're a private hire driver, no excuse. You should already be joining up with us. If you value your license, you're relying on a public license for your business, and you know the peril that can be caused by the police or by the licensing authority, whether it's points up in Birmingham or Nottingham. I think Birmingham haven't done it yet, but they're going to do it Cardiff. You know the havoc that can create. You should be in a union, protect your license.
Absolutely.
And also, we challenge that we to build a collective power. We have to build a collective power. We are building the collective power. So post Supreme Court, we're going to build our leveraging power with these apps. That's the only future we're ever going to have, is with real collective power. Collective power. Join the union. Sign up. adcu.org.uk. Let's get the data. Good night. Take care.